Good evening, everyone. How you doing tonight? Welcome to the North Carolina Cryptid and Paranormal Project. My name is Tom, and I'm the host of the show. Um, Tonight we have a guest. His name is Dennis Carroll, and he is a researcher, author, and also he was a deliverance minister, and I think he was an ex-law enforcement as well. So we're going to start talking about the connection, paranormal connection between Bigfoot, Dogman, and cryptids. So without further ado, here is our guest.
Good evening.
Yes, sir.
How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How about you, too?
Pretty good. It a little bit warmer today, so it's pretty good outside.
Yeah.
I'm not that far away from you geographically. I'm in South Carolina, so
Yeah, you're
um,
right down
we
the
got
road, 77.
yeah, we kind of share a little bit of the southeast there. Um,
Exactly.
but it was a little unusually warm today. Not hot, but it was warm. It's nice, pleasant.
Oh yeah, we got record. Anything's better than the day or two before Christmas when it was like 10 degrees out down here. That was probably the
Yeah.
worst, coldest weather the South's seen in a long time down here.
Uh, in this part of in the neck of the country, we kind of have spring in the morning, and then we'll have fall maybe in the evening, and sometimes winter will show up. Dude, you never know what you're going to face in this part of the country. Don't seem like
Yeah,
it's kind of catch you off guard if you're not careful.
absolutely, definitely. Bipolar weather in the South. It's crazy. One day in the morning it's 20 degrees out. In the
Yep.
afternoon it's 45, 50, and then at night it gets down about 38, 40. So it cools back
Uh,
down. But I'll take it. I'll take anything over those cold days we had. Especially working
and it
out.
kind of makes it hard to dress.
Oh
Know
yeah,
what you got to wear.
absolutely.
Definitely.
Well, let's get into what you do, man. I mean, what got you kind of started doing? I know you've been doing this for a long time. So what kind of got you started doing all this?
Well, I've been in the paranormal field, or I guess you call it a field or science or whatever. I've been in it now for 55 plus years. Never gets old. It's a very interesting subject, and I like what I always tell people. I like the whole pie. I'm not just interested in one slice.
Hmm.
I like all things related, whether it be demonology, spiritual research, UFOlogy, Earth anomalies, uh, cryptozoology, the whole thing. I like it all. I've studied it all for many years. It's fascinating, all that different aspects of it. To me, it's an ongoing subject. I've written several books about it. To me, it is fascinating. I can't envision life without the paranormal side of it. To me, it's been that way since I think about. Well, I got started when I was probably about like 14 years old. I had my first paranormal experience, and that kind of lit a fire under me to find out what I had, seen and what I saw and what it meant. I began to study these things, began to look deeper into it. I've always been, I don't know, since I can remember, Tom, always been interested in these things. But when you have your own experience, you kind of turn a corner, and then things are more personal to you that way, and it gives you a different perspective on these things. But as I was mentioning to earlier in another show, I my very first cryptid type of investigation was actually the first one I ever actually had was actually a werewolf sighting.
Hmm.
And I think I was about 16 years old when I investigated that, which I think turned out to be more or less something misconstrued to be. I think it was like a German Shepherd is what it really turned out to be in the end, and it was not a werewolf, I don't think. But it was interesting. That kind of got me started and interested in the monster side of the paranormal, is what I always called it. The things that really shouldn't be there, or the unusual things like that. My very first Bigfoot case was very interesting. Um, I had read a lot about Bigfoot and read a lot. I'm always a constant reader, and I tell that to people that get into this field. Read, read, read. That's where you get all this at. The more knowledge you get, the better off you are. The more arrows you got in your quiver, so to speak. Um, but my first case of Bigfoot came probably when I was in my 20s, early 20s, and I had sort of already had a reputation as a paranormal guy. And I was at work. I worked at the hospital, local hospital, for about 30 years. And I was at work at the hospital, and we had a break area. Um, it was out, kind of outside, where they would go. People would go smoke and all that stuff. And so I met a guy out there one day, and he said, "Well, hey, I had a friend that's had some kind of experience with some kind of monster." And I immediately perked up, and I said, "Really? What happened? You know?" And they said that it was something about like the way he described it to me. It sounded very interesting. So I said, "Please get me in touch with this guy. I want to talk to him. I want to
Mm-hmm.
talk to him firsthand." So this was the first time I'd ever interviewed anybody that had actually had, except for the werewolf thing, that had actually had an encounter with Bigfoot. So I finally got in touch with this guy, and I met him and his girlfriend at a local cafe, and they told me their story, which was very interesting. And like I said before, I could see the fear still in their eyes. I could see that this had caused them a traumatic incident in their mind, especially of what they, especially the guy, the girl, his girlfriend had not actually ever saw what he saw.
Right.
She just was more frightened by his reaction
Mm-hmm.
to what he'd seen. But it all starts out like very much like a horror movie kind of a thing. They were in a Volkswagen,
Right.
and you remember the old Volkswagen Beetles,
Yo, buggy. Yep.
and they were on the lovers lane sort of a thing. It was a dead end kind of a turnaround way out in the countryside somewhere, on a dirt road,
Right.
and they were down the end of this dirt road. And at the end of this dirt road, there was it's very interesting to remember this. There was a sign, and it was a dead end road sign,
Mm-hmm.
and it was about at the very end there, and this is where all this took place. So he and his girlfriend, they were in the Volkswagen doing what young people do.
Yeah.
And she does up and says, "Hey, there's somebody out there walking around in the woods, you know." And it was summertime. The windows were down in the Volkswagen, and 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 the guy, he didn't think about anything. He thought, somebody's messing with us, you know, somebody's spying on us or something. Somebody's gonna, you know, screw around with us a little bit here. So he kind of gets mad. He gets out. He's got one of these long flashlights. I think a 5D cell flashlight, one of those long ones. And many years later, I got into law enforcement, and I carried one of those. They make a good nightstick too, by the way.
Good old night.
It's a very long one. Yeah, you remember those.
Yep.
And so anyway, he gets out with a flashlight, and it's dark. You know, you and I know, if you've been out in the woods, how very, very dark it can be when you're far away from any kind of light source,
No
except
doubt.
natural light. And I think it might have been, I can't remember now. I think it was a moonless night. It wasn't, you know, real bright. It wasn't anything like that. But anyway, he gets out of the car and he gets the flashlight, and sure enough, as soon as he turns it on, the batteries go dead.
Oh gosh.
So he's looking around, and and they're right on the edge of this woods. I don't know, these woods were big, I don't know how many acres of woods, but. And he said the first thing that got him was that skunky like smell. He said it smelled. I asked him, I remember that day. I said, "You mean it smelled like a skunk?" He said it smelled like a dead skunk. It said it had that that mortality kind of a smell to it that you smell on dead things, you know. And he said, but it had that skunky smell too to it. Well, I immediately perked up when I heard this because I think of skunk ape, you know,
Yeah.
which is a very southern version of Bigfoot, you know. So he said he smelled the smell first, and it kind of hit him, you know. And he said he was standing there kind of peering in the woods, and said this dark shadow loomed up in front of him. He said it was huge. He said it scared him. He said I didn't. He said I don't mean to tell you, Mister Carroll. I've wet my pants. It scared me that bad. So all of a sudden there it was, and he said it was high up over the sign that was there, the sign I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
He said, and it was just black. He couldn't make out any details, but he said it was big and it was bulky looking, you know. That
Right.
was all he could tell me because it was just basically a shadow. I mean, he couldn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Said he scared him so bad, he turned around, he jumped in the Volkswagen, and that's when it scared her because she could see how upset he was.
Oh yeah.
He was screaming, "We got to get out of here! We got to get out of here!" You know how the thing. So, like I said, the Volkswagen was pulled in, but he had to kind of turn it to leave,
Hmm.
because, like I said, it's like a cul-de-sac kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah. Corner
And he
in.
had to turn it to leave. And he said as he finally got in gear, and as he turned around, he was starting out slow. You didn't pop a Volkswagen real fast. It wasn't like a GTO or
No.
anything like that. A Volkswagen. And he said all of a sudden the back wheels of the Volkswagen come up off the ground.
Oh crap.
And they said they could tell because the wheels, that's where the engine is, in the Volkswagen.
Oh
That's the
yeah.
heaviest part of it. It comes up all the not way off, but just enough so the wheels are turning without hitting the ground. And he said it was just like something took that Volkswagen and just kind of pushed it out and dropped it. Just kind of pushed it. And so that's when he hit the ground and took off, and he got out of there. So I found out where the location was, and to this day, I knew exactly about kind of where it was. And to this day, though, nowadays it's changed drastically since then because it's been a long. This has been, yeah, about 30 years ago, I guess. But anyway, I went there. I want to go. I got to go there and check this out. Definitely. So I found out the location, went there, but when I got there, it had rained previously the night before I could get there to it.
All tracks.
Um, Unfortunately, yeah. And But when I got there, I'll tell you this, Tom, that skunky smell was still in the air. It was
Yeah.
very faint though. It wasn't very bold, just faint. But I looked around and I measured that signpost. And it had the dead end signpost, and it was 8 foot out of the ground. And whatever he saw had to have been at least 9 or 10 foot tall,
Yeah. If it stood above an eight
by the
foot
way he
tall, it had to
described
be close to
it. Yeah,
10 foot tall if it was
yeah,
that much higher
mm,
over that sign. Because all those signs are the tip of them
hmm
signs are 8 foot, pretty much. Standard.
yeah. But I could tell, like I said earlier, this had really frightened them. They didn't want their names involved. They didn't want to say anything. Of course, I always observe complete confidentiality with anybody that comes to me with any of this stuff. But they were so frightened by it. I could really it affected me. I could tell how traumatic it had been for them. So that got me very interested in cryptozoology from that day forward too. That was another favorite of mine
Hmm.
in the paranormal path. But I had my own experience years later. Like I say, when you have your own experience, it changes your outlook drastically in many ways. Um, I pulled over thousands of case histories of Bigfoot sightings, Dogman, all of these different types of cryptids, Chupacabra, Mothman. I've been on the trail of Mothman, been all the way to West Virginia looking for him.
Wow.
Mothman is a fascinating cryptid as well. But anyway, I had my own experience years later, deep in the woods of Oconee County. I know you've probably heard of Oconee County, which is a big county. It kind of borders South Carolina and Georgia.
Okay. Yeah. South of it.
And yeah, it was way out in the Oconee woods what happened to me. And I'll tell you what, how it transpired. I had a couple of other guys with me, and we had been out that night. There had been reports. Actually, I had found footprints, 18-inch footprints that were, unfortunately, they were not in the kind of ground I could cast them. Unfortunately, that's the way it goes. It seems like if he's going to step in a place, he's going to always find the worst place to step.
Yeah.
Seems like never in a good muddy area, unfortunately. That's the way it goes. But anyway, I found these 18-inch footprints in this area. So we were actively scouting this area out. And that night, when night fell, and like I said earlier, when it gets dark, it's dark. And I happened to have a night scope, a night vision scope with me. And now what had happened? These two guys, we had been looking around, and there'd been reports there. That's why we were there. There'd been reports of Bigfoot supposed to be seen in this area, and there was a swampy land next to it too, by the way, which is prime. Wherever there's water or swampy areas like that, it seems to be prime Bigfoot country. So anyway, I was sitting there now. Here's what I told them. I don't know if you've ever read too much about tiger hunting,
Mm-hmm.
but back in the old days in India, when they used to hunt tigers, they would beat the bushes. That's where that expression comes, beating the bushes.
Yeah.
That's a way to hunt. You kind of, what you do is you're trying to flush out something
Right.
and get it to come towards you. So what I did, I told those two guys, I said, you go to the left and you go to the other one go to the right, and I'm going to stay in the middle. You go way out and swing in the woods, and come back and let's see if you flush anything towards me, you
Right.
know. We're just gonna try it, that was something to try. And that night I'd heard several tree knocks. Now whether it was limbs knocking against each other, sometimes, things in nature can fool you.
Mm-hmm.
But I had heard one behind on the left side, and then again on the right, later on the right, and then behind me, which is not a good feeling. I know it's all by yourself. You begin to hear these noises like that. But whether or not it was Bigfoot, to this day, I couldn't tell you for sure. But anyway, as the night went on and I could see them further and further go out deep down into the woods, on the other side of me, it got really quiet. And that's an interesting sign, that's one thing I always say, things start getting really quiet. Something's about to happen. It's almost as if it's a sign or a warning. And I had been looking through my night scope. Now, I know if you're familiar with a night vision scope, it will hurt your eyes eventually. It
Yeah.
bothers your eyes a little bit. And
Long
this was
repetitive use.
this was a binocular.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't binoculars. It was a binocular, and
Yeah.
it kind of had been bothering my eye a little bit. So I just kind of invested my eye a minute. And of course, that's the worst time that something's going to happen. And sure enough, there was movement in front of me. Now, like I say, it was so dark, Tom, you couldn't see the hand in front of your face.
Oh, I
Yeah.
bet.
I mean, it was dark, but I could feel movement in front of me. And it wasn't these guys, because I know I could have heard them coming back. I
Right.
mean, it was a movement, and I immediately pulled that monocular up and started looking through it. Well, what I caught was just like a flash of lightning type thing, okay, for me. Um, it was so quick. He left that image on me. But I could see a sapling in front of me, and it was probably a 6 or 7 foot sapling, so big around, not very big. And it was moving. Well, there was no wind that night. Okay, there was no breeze. It was definitely still. It was a still summer night, and that sapling was moving. I knew something had brushed it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I kind of followed that around, and just at the big, huge oak tree, probably maybe 6 yards from me, probably that close. Something went behind that tree, and I could just see the side of it, which was a shoulder like, and the arm,
Mm-hmm.
and a little bit of a leg or thigh, I guess you would say, before it went behind that tree. And it's like I say, a huge oak tree. This thing was probably, I guess, 4 foot around. It was
Right.
a big tree, big oak tree, live oak.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately jumped up and went towards that tree. And I kept watching the whole forest in front of me. I said, I'm going to see this thing trying to get away from me. I know it's going to run through there or what. And here's the weird part, Tom. Well, the moment it went behind that tree, it was just gone. There's no way I've done a lot of deer hunting. I've run into bear. I've seen mountain lions. I've seen bobcats. I've seen
Mm-hmm.
everything out there in the woods. Okay. I've seen coyotes, the whole works. Everything leaves a trail.
Yep.
Or it makes a trail when it leaves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This thing went behind that tree and was gone. I even got I got a big flashlight out. I was looking up in the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. I said, did he go up in the tree? How did he get gone? that fast in front of me. That's what amazed me so
Sounds like
much.
a portal dimension transfer. You know, I mean that's the common conjecture with these. Something 800 pounds. There's no way it can't just stop and
Yeah,
disappear and not make any more
uh,
noise and go into thin air.
that's what
Got to be
that's what
paranormal connection.
that's what really got me, you know. And let me describe what I saw though. Now,
Yeah.
it was like it had like long reddish hair, and it wasn't red like a red-headed person. It was sort of a darkish brownish red, like it's
Auburn.
kind of hard. Yeah, and it was long. It was, I've always thought of Bigfoot having short fur, kind of like a bear.
Hmm.
No, this was kind of long hair because it hung down from the arm a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, not long, but about like that maybe from the arm, because it moved when his arm moved. It like went around the tree. It's almost as like it was going to hug it, but it didn't.
Hmm.
And anyway, the hair I saw was sort of a reddish brown cinnamon color, I guess you could say, sort
Right.
of. And that's what I could see. I couldn't see the face. I didn't get to see the face,
Hmm.
but like just that whole side of it, that quick behind that tree, and it was gone. And I spent the rest of that night looking for tracks,
Yeah.
for anything that would tell me what direction this thing went in. The
Yeah.
other two guys got back. I told them what happened. We searched that entire night as far as we could till daybreak. And I even went back a few days later to see if I could find anything, but it was it. It was very strange. Just like poof, he was gone. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. Let's call it. Steve Riley has a question about the first encounter we were eyewitness told you about. If there was any prints on that Volkswagen Bug, if you remember any prints being on that car.
I asked him about that, and whatever. If you might remember these old Volkswagens,
Yeah, steel.
they used to have a chrome bumper.
Yep. Chrome bumper made of
And,
steel.
yeah, and I thought, hey, maybe there's some footprints on that. But I asked him, and I never did get to see the bug myself. But I asked him, did it leave any prints? Were there any prints on the back? And I thought maybe it had touched the back of it's actually the hood is in the back. Did it had touched that? He said he looked at the whole car. There's nothing but mud. So when he took off that night, it was a little muddy like around there, and he probably stirred up a little must or dust on the Volkswagen when he left. And if there had been any prints, probably it had been pretty well eliminated by that.
I know that's there's a chrome bumper on the Volkswagen. 'Cause I remember when I was a kid, we had
Mhm.
the woods we grew up in. A bunch of older kids that were probably 6 years older than us, maybe
Mhm.
7 or 8 year old older. They were all driving, and they took a old Volkswagen buggy and they took it down to the clay pits, riding in the mud, and they
Right.
drove the car around those pits for like 3 nights straight till they blew the car up, and then they burnt the car on fire, and everything
Yeah.
caught fire, and the only thing that was pretty much left of that car was a chrome bumper. So that's why I remember chrome bumpers on those Volkswagens were like die hard, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I even looked when I went there to that location. I looked for several hours for any kind of prints. But where this had taken place was sort of like a field, a little bit of a small field that led up to the woods.
Hmm.
Maybe I would say really not a field. It's more or less like a causeway
Yeah.
kind of a thing. Maybe it had been about 7 or 8 feet, 8 feet from the road through this grassy area to the woods. I could find no prints in that. I had wished it had stepped in the road. It would have definitely made some prints. Even it would have stayed even with the rain. It didn't rain that hard that night. It rained pretty. It was a pretty good rain, but it was enough if it had mashed any of the grass down, and left that kind of a grassy print. I might would have seen it if it had not rained, unfortunately.
Hmm.
But that's what I was looking for. I was hoping it had left some muddy footprints, but I didn't find any.
That's all right. Well, you got what you got, right? You're able to find what you could find when it came to that, doing a little further investigation on that eyewitness. What else was I going to ask you about? Deliverance ministry. You've done that for a little bit, haven't you?
Have I now?
Have you done deliverance ministry?
Oh, oh yeah, I've been into demonology for a long time. I've actually been sort of what you would call somewhat of a demonology consultant.
Right.
I've consulted with people all over the world with their demonology type problems, as far flung as India, the UK, all the way to Alaska, Rio de Janeiro. You wouldn't believe all these different places in the world that people have contacted me from with these problems. It is a very prevalent problem in paranormal circles. Matter of fact, I warn a lot of paranormal and so-called and paranormal investigators to protect yourself, to be very careful where you go, because you've got to play the demon card. Unfortunately, in this, it's a card that stays on the table, and you can't ignore it. It is real. I'll tell you this, Tom, without a doubt. I have seen these things. They are real. I have seen them face to face. Demons are not imagination. They're not things of fairy tale. They are real, and
Right.
they can very badly affect you
Mm-hmm.
if you're not careful. Um, they're
Oh.
nothing to play around with. It's sort of like I was mentioning this on the show the other day. You don't play around with a rattlesnake; it's
Mm-hmm.
going to eventually bite you if you're not careful. And that's the way these forces are very dangerous. Matter of fact, I'll say this right now without any doubt, sitting here tonight, that I know of a good many people 6 foot under right now, put there by these
Right.
forces. They're very dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, well, people think they go into this lightly. Even cryptids too. I mean, they can be manipulating a demonic possession into one of these beings. People think
Uh,
they're dealing with a cryptid, they're dealing with a demon, and then boom, boom, the human gets
well,
involved and they're
I
possessed.
have seen evidence, Tom,
Hmm.
that demonology, that there is evidence that these demons can use these images
Hmm.
a lot of times to frighten people, to create that negativity that they feed off of. Uh, uh, I've often said this many times. My friend William Nighthawk and I have talked about this many times. If the creature you're dealing with has those red eyes,
Hmm.
the fiery type red eyes, and you're probably dealing with something of a supernatural nature, more
Right.
so than a natural thing. And here's where what gets me. To me, the dogman phenomenon,
Hmm.
and I call it phenomenon. It gets more interesting as time goes on. The more people talk about it, but to me, it has, I don't know, that demonology type smell to it in certain instances. There's been over the years, especially deep in folklore and cultural references of witchcraft being able to turn people into certain types of creatures.
Oh yeah.
We know that with the Skinwalker is one of the very famous ones.
Oh yeah.
But
Skinwalker.
the werewolf itself, which I don't really consider it a cryptid because I consider it more of a supernatural type creature. The werewolf, to me, is brought about mainly by magical purposes, dark magic.
Hmm.
Uh, Mostly, unless it's sort of a curse type of a werewolf, that's another branch of it altogether.
Right.
But uh, to me, you've got that magical element, you've got that supernatural element that runs through some of this stuff.
Hmm.
Even Bigfoot is associated with magic, especially by the Native Americans. They
Right.
said that Bigfoot had his own, Sasquatch has his own type of a natural magic
Right.
that's tied to the land. But when you talk about something like that, you're also talking and you're getting into the thing of actually um, elemental type spirits, you
Hmm.
might say. And,
Elementals.
I can answer that question from Laurie there. The attachments are demonic, uh, usually. There are very rare instances of human spiritual attachments, or a human spirit attaches to a person or even to an object. But most of the time, 99.9% of the time, it is demonic in nature when he does.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard the werewolf thing. I've heard an old I think it was an old interview a while back, a couple years ago. Forget what channel it was, but it was a guy that was he was actually a member of the Satan Church, and he was actually reformed into Christianity, and he was telling accounts of him watching them gathering around in the woods, doing an occult gathering,
Mhm.
and a
Mhm.
man transformed into a werewolf. And they say it's
Well,
like
really,
those things
Tom,
that you're doing because
if you look at
your
it,
soul break.
if you look at it the right way, the werewolf and the skinwalker have a lot in common.
Mhm.
The skinwalker is a North American thing, whereas in the werewolf is a European type
Yeah,
thing. But they're both their transformations are brought about by dark magic.
absolutely.
Uh, an old friend of mine, J.C. Johnson. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yes, J.C. Johnson. Yeah, the old
The
recently
late
he
great
passed.
J.C. Johnson. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, he and I talked a good bit about skinwalkers. He was very deep into skinwalker research and stuff. Um, they they transform. They're shapeshifters only due to their magic. Whereas in the werewolf, in European folklore and legend, he has to wear a belt
Hmm.
of a wolf pelt.
That's right.
Uh, the skinwalker does something very similar to that too. By the way, he puts on the skin of the wolf or the coyote or whatever it is he's doing. Um, anyway, the werewolf has that wolf belt, but he also is in league supposedly with Satan. He has magical powers given to him by the demonic, and enables him to become. Well, here's the most interesting part of the werewolf. I find it more interesting than Dogman or even Sasquatch to a certain extent. There's one thing that sets the werewolf apart. He's my favorite cryptid, if you want to call him a cryptid. I don't call him a cryptid, but anyway, he's my favorite monster. Uh, here's the interesting thing, Tom. He has the body of the beast,
Hmm.
but the mind of a man. That makes him
Yeah,
far more dangerous
that's
than
more
anything
dangerous
you
than
ever run into.
yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want to go against him. Anyway, unless you are cursed by the werewolf curse. Now,
Hmm.
that can be either carried down through the family line, or if you're bitten and survive the bite of a werewolf, you're
Right.
supposedly cursed to transform. That's the other way. So that's sort of, I call it the victim of a werewolf, of lycanthropy is what it is. But the person that acknowledges the satanic powers in order to change into that, it would be a dark, evil kind of a person, like the skinwalker. He's not a good guy. The skinwalker usually does his things to hurt people with his magic
Oh
or
yeah.
control things and all that. So you're talking about bad actors, individuals that don't really care about human lives. So you're dealing with I call them some of the very first serial killers in a way because the way they did. Look at the Beast of Gavaudan,
Oh yeah.
which
Devil
my
Frank.
friend Ken Gerhardt investigated that in a very interesting documentary, and I think they came to the conclusion that it was actually somebody's pet hyena or something like
Yeah.
that. And yeah, very interesting
Exotic,
stuff.
exotic animal that's got loose, and it was just it was from another hyenas that no one knew what they were back then. So apparently it was something of that nature, and it devoured a bunch of people, and they wound up hunting it down and getting it.
Yeah,
East
yeah.
of Baudin in France back in what
Hmm.
16 or was it 1400 or 1600? Back in those days. I don't know the exact date, but I know it's Gévaudan. I can't even pronounce it because I'm not French, but
Yeah,
so yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah. But that's what interests me, Tom. When cryptozoology and the supernatural start mixing up together, it's very
Mhm.
interesting.
It is.
Uh, to me, uh, I think one of the key things that we need to look at as investigative researchers are folklore and the culture of these certain, like the Native American cultures and the European cultures.
Mhm.
They tell us a lot, and as I said earlier about the patterns that are there that point us. They are the clues that point us to our hopefully our evidence. I've said this before, and I'm not trying to sound smart alecky about this, but my job as an investigative researcher is not to convince you of anything. My job is to find the evidence, and you're going to believe what you're going to believe, irregardless. Like you and I could be a picture could be taken of you and me tomorrow with Bigfoot. Nobody'd believe it.
Hmm. That's the
That's just the
problem.
way people are.
The problem
But
is you can
if
have
we
it.
come up with a body now, that's a different thing. But I'm just saying, people not all going to believe what they're going. They're going to have their own opinions, And as an investigator, you're not there to sway somebody's opinion. You're
No.
there to present the evidence. Hey, this is what I found,
Yep. Present the
and
facts.
you
Present the data.
take it whichever way you want to look at it.
Show the data. Present the facts, and take like Steve from How to Hunt says, take what you want with it or leave it. Do what you want.
Yeah, that's true.
That's pretty good.
That's just being human too.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, I find it interesting though when cryptozoology and the supernatural start mixing it up together. There, you guys. I mean, look at the chupacabra. It's a fascinating thing. My friend Nick Redfern has investigated. I think he wrote a book about it.
Hmm.
Um, I think he went. I think he went to somewhere. I forget now what country it was. Went overseas somewhere checking on the chupacabra. But it's almost demonical in the way it's talked about. It sucks blood out of things. It has a vampire trait to it. It's been
Yeah.
described sometimes as having like the visage of a gargoyle looking type thing. What are we dealing with here? But most of the chupacabra that I've investigated look like mainly coyotes with a bad case of the mange,
Yeah.
uh, which I think is what they probably are a lot of times.
A coy dog.
Here's it. Here's the interesting thing, Tom, and I thought this. We've got to be very cautious in the things and how we approach them. Sometimes our belief and our opinion can override the facts, and we don't want to do that. We don't want our beliefs. So you want to believe something so much that you make it so. When really you don't want to do that because you're really fooling yourself and you will fool other people too. You confuse the whole thing.
Yeah.
You confuse it and you compound that confusion by throwing your own belief system in on something. You got to look at it for what it really is and weigh the facts to get that empirical evidence that tells without a doubt what it is you're doing. You can't let your own opinion and your belief in something shade it.
Right.
You've defeated yourself from the beginning if you do that.
Absolutely. Someone was saying that the chupacabra, the Puerto Rican. I know there's two different versions. I know the Puerto
Yeah,
Rican version
Puerto
has like
Rico, that's
scales,
where it was at.
almost like a gremlin with scales on its back, and like the American one is
Mm-hmm.
like you said, a mangy blue skin coy dog. Mutated. You know,
Yeah. Hmm.
it's wild.
Well, there's been some. I was reading this the other day. There's been a sort of a I won't say a subspecies, but
Hmm.
a different kind of a coyote found. I think it was in California, and they had like blue eyes,
Really.
and they had sort of a blue tint to their coat. Like now, whether they were exposed to some type of chemicals or what is
Hmm.
going on with that, I don't know, or some failed experiment, or they got away from it or something. I don't know what the deal is, but that's very interesting. It's sort of a mutation of
Hmm.
coyotes.
Or some kind of chimera, maybe made in a lab, like you said, in somewhere. Like in what's the place?
Hmm.
There's one in not Norwalk. I'm thinking it's in New York. Al Santoriga, you chime in. There's a place in Montauk Island. You remember the Montauk Island? There's all kinds of weird things washing up on the shore.
Oh yeah,
One thing
oh
looked like
yeah,
a raccoon, a hairless raccoon with a bird nose laying on the shore. I mean, that place was wild. I think they had I think it was an infectious disease center where they were kind of doing a lot of testing on animals, and they're probably doing chimera breeding like crazy behind closed doors.
yeah.
Yeah. Anything about the Rougarou? Steve wants to know. Have you investigated that Plum Island?
Oh yeah, I've had some dealings with the Rougarou. The Rougarou is a very interesting thing. It has a lot of similarities to the Wendigo, which I've investigated as well. It has sort of a spiritual connection, like I said before, that's where your cryptozoology and your supernatural kind of start to blend. The Rougarou is a spirit
Mm-hmm.
that inhabits people, and it's supposed to look like a human with the head of a dog or a wolf. The name is a derivation of Rougarou, which is I think Italian or Spanish for wolf man. Anyway, the Rougarou is supposed to be sometimes attributed to swamp magic
Mm-hmm.
in the bayous of Louisiana and places like that. The Rougarou is supposed to be a spirit that can possess or inhabit a person. And I think the part of the curse is they're under this for like 100 days, and it passes on to someone else. And the Wendigo is very much like that. The Wendigo is not more or less of possessing, but it is a spirit of the land, an elemental that the Native Americans talk about, of a hunger, of a dark
Mm-hmm.
hunger. It is a cannibalistic type thing. It
That's
will
right.
cause you to be. It will call if it possesses you. It will
Mm-hmm.
turn you into a cannibal as well, supposedly. And throughout the cultures of the world, cannibalism is a big taboo. That was
Mm-hmm.
something that you didn't engage in. That was a one bad thing people didn't. That was an unwritten law of the ancient world. You didn't eat other people.
Right. They
That,
said if you were
look
eating,
at
if you were
look at
eating,
Little Red Riding Hood. That's a cannibal story, by the way. The wolf eats grandma and everything, and eats your Little Red Riding Hood too, by the way. And and they're saved though from the belly of the wolf. But to me, the Wendigo and the Rougarou share some very interesting characteristics in the
right.
fact that they are spiritual based animal or things or beings or entities, whatever name you want to call them. So you're dealing with, well, but they can take physical form as well.
Yeah.
So they're not just a spirit floating around in the air.
Yeah. Like you were saying something about the spirit of the cannibal. Like the old saying is like cannibalistic things. When you eat another person, you're kind of eating their soul, and you're becoming part of their soul when you eat them. So there's a whole weirdness about that being cannibal,
Yeah.
because you're kind of inheriting that person's spirit that you eat. The same thing with like Wendigo and the Rougarou possession. You're taking in that they're taking over your soul, and they become you when you become
And the
inhabited by
interesting thing about
spirit.
the Rougarou, Tom, is if you spill blood, you can become a Rougarou. In other words, if you've done something very bad, like maybe
Mhm.
killed someone or beat someone up or whatever, if you spilled human blood, that used to be a big taboo thing too, along with eating somebody. You just didn't spill someone else's blood. That was, meant you're going to be either they were going to fight you back or you were just a bad guy.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is the blood, kind of a thing, connection runs through a lot of this. Um, the
Like
skinwalkers use blood in their ceremonies. The werewolf
owl.
used blood. All this blood, 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 blood. You keep hearing
Blood,
this in a lot of
blood
these
is
things,
good.
like with the vampire.
Mm-hmm.
I even had once had a run in with a vampire, but it's a story for another time, I guess. But anyway, um, there's an interesting thing about the blood. It's almost, and we've always heard this in all of our lives, that an animal, especially like a dog or something, tastes human blood. It
Mm-hmm.
supposedly changes the spiritual aspect of that animal, and it's supposed to do human beings the same way as well. Um, I've talked to a lot of the law enforcement officers who have taken life. Look, fortunately, I never had to do that on the job.
Mm-hmm.
I came close, but never had to. But it affects you. It changes your whole spiritual demeanor to know that you've taken a life. You know.
Right.
So these things were looked upon by ancient cultures as some very powerful stuff.
Got a question from Darkwoods.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, I've been in some interesting situations. What happened to me when I was really young? I was probably about 16 years old, and I was in Charleston, South Carolina, and I was staying with an aunt and uncle down there. And being a stupid kid, I got into some stuff I shouldn't have probably. Um, what happened is one night I was hanging around 7-Eleven store down there. It used to be the only thing that would stay open.
Yeah.
Well, back in the old days. And I was hanging around there one night and ran into a guy there. We got to talking, and of course, whenever you talk to me after a while, the paranormal always comes up for some strange reason. Anyway, I was talking to him about some stuff like that. He says, "Well, you want to see something really scary?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you want to see something really scary, but we got to be very careful because it could get us killed." I said, okay, I'm up for this. What is it? You know? And he said, well, you follow me. Come on, let's go. So I followed this guy, and we went down a long, long dirt road out in the middle. I don't know where. We were in the marshlands on the coastal marshlands there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we went. The road went through some of this stuff, and he we got to this hill, big hill, wherever this was, and he said, "Now what we got to do? We got to crawl up this hill." So I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "We got to crawl up this hill, and you got to be careful, be quiet, don't even breathe, because we're going to see something, and if they catch us, they'll kill us. We'll be dead."
Mm.
He said, "You're going to see a real voodoo ceremony." Well, I was up for that, definitely, and so we crawled like soldiers up the hill, okay, and we got up to the top, and it was a moonlit night, full moon, I guess, very bright. And we could see off the top of this hill, Tom. It was down sort of like a little valley, like a little almost like a natural amphitheater type looking thing, place. Whatever it was, I don't know. Anyway, it was a big group of people down there. There were some African American people, but there was, I think, white people as well there. And it was a group of them. Most of them were well, I'd say over half were women.
Mm-hmm.
And they were dancing, around this. I didn't understand what was going on. There was a big bonfire, and drumming. They had drums. The whole works. This was just like something. This was not anything that you go to pay money to see in New Orleans. That's a tourist thing. Okay, this was the real deal. These
You
were
were
real
so.
people who were really practicing voodoo magic, and they were dancing around. Some of the women didn't have tops on, by the way. And they were dancing around this fire, and I was probably maybe, I would say, 40 yards away from this. Actually,
Okay.
we were up on the hill looking down on them, and we didn't. That's what he was so adamant about. Don't raise up because they'll see us. Stay part of the hill. You know, and he told me, he said, if they get us, they'll kill us because. And I've talked to a lot of people about these things, and I've run into other ceremonial areas as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, um, they were doing their job down there, and it's full moon and all this really affected him. I said, well, I've got to find out more about this. What these people are doing. What kind of a religion is this, or what? So he said, let's get out of here now. We got to get out of here. We've been here long enough. So we had to back down that hill.
Yeah.
And after that experience, I said, I've got to find out more. I got to learn more about what's going on about this. And I've always been interested in the anthropological part of,
Right.
of, of people's belief systems and stuff. So I went and studied more about the voodoo, and I found out that they were allowing spirits to come in them and possess them, sort of, and they would dance to these spiritual type things. These spirits would take over them, and some of them were on the ground like animals on four arms walking around. The spirits would do all kind of weird stuff. You know, I won't go deep into detail. It's very strange stuff. But
Sure.
anyway,
Animalistic. Yeah.
yeah. But I found out later that demonic spirits debase humans that way. They can
Mm-hmm.
make you act like an animal, moo like a cow.
Mm-hmm.
They do that to debase you spiritually, lower than animals actually. But anyway, I found out later that truly the guy was right. They probably would have killed us if they'd have caught us because we
Oh
were
yeah.
seeing something that outsiders are not supposed to see. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
You were seeing something wild.
So that was a very dangerous situation to be in.
Yeah, you would have got killed by either one of them, or maybe the spirit would have, people acting in spirit would have came at you, and there was a lot more of them than there were of you. So definitely would have got in trouble that way.
Oh yeah, and I've been in the woods and found ceremonial places of witchcraft and satanic worship.
That's real.
Where
That's
they,
real.
where they,
Real stuff.
oh yeah,
You could
that's a
tell.
very interesting thing that we tell people a lot. That if you're in the woods, you run up on another area like that, get the heck out of there, because usually they watch those areas. They keep them under surveillance,
Yeah,
and these people will
especially.
kill. Really, with the Tom, these people are not will not play around with you. They will kill to keep their secret their identity secret to the outside world.
Isn't
Because
there ways?
but very much
Isn't,
like the Ku Klux Klan used to be. That's why they wore hoods. They
hmm
remained secret. In society, these people are very much like that in that way. You don't go into their ceremonies. You don't bust in on them. You don't mess with their areas, or they will have retribution on you if they can. You know.
Oh yeah, and they'll be, they could be high ranked politicians, they could be people, high members of the community, and there's ways you can tell before you even get close, isn't there? Like, don't there be like signs on trees or certain markings on the ground when you're coming into an area like that? Isn't there ways you can tell
Hmm.
that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, you could tell by certain things that they do, the certain symbols they leave, signals that they're called, or runes that are cast about in places like this to tell you these are real serious people. They're not just amateurs, boys and girls playing around with this junk. I've been in situations like that where I found these things like that have happened that went very bad, probably in some ways. You get a very feeling of evil in a place like that. I mean, I don't know if you've ever run into that, but I've been in places that it was just as thick as fog. You could like cut it with a knife. The evil feeling that was there, the darkness. Uh, to me, that's a warning. That's a warning sign immediately. You might better get out of there. There are certain places, I think, where these doorways are open to these forces that remains stained forever. A lot of people call them haunted locations.
Hmm.
Uh, it's just an area that has been used, and most of the time when they open these doorways, these dark spiritual doorways, they don't close them properly. Yeah, they do have lookouts too, I'm sure. And I've been in, so I walked up. I know we'll forget. I forget where I was at now, but I never will forget that day when I walked up on this site, and I had the hair at the back of the neck, kind of a thing. I had the feeling I was being watched. I said, "Let's get out of here." I was with some other people. So let's get out of here now. It's a good idea we leave. Okay. Uh, it's sort of like very taboo to them for you to come in on their ceremonial ritual areas. They don't like that at all.
You're pretty much an eyewitness, and you got to go. If you get caught, you're pretty much you're an accessory, and you got to go no matter what. And they're probably gonna, one way or another, they're gonna find you and
Oh yeah,
get you.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
You
They'll
know,
hunt you down and get. They will. Their retribution is great for them. That's a big thing to them. Revenge is a lot of these people run on anyway. Uh, a lot of dark magic is utilized to get revenge on other people. These people don't care what they do to you,
Mm.
or how they do it.
Yeah. I
They're
mean,
very
usually
dangerous.
usually the blood sacrifice for a certain holiday. People don't realize just because Halloween's Halloween. I mean, Christmas isn't just another holiday to make a sacrifice for these dark, forces,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. And one of the worst nights of all is Walpurgis Night. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But Walpurgis Night, which is the last day in April, the night before May Day, the first day of May,
Hmm.
is one of the worst times of all. Really, it's worse than Halloween.
Really?
Um, Walpurgis Night, or Witches Night, as they used to call it,
Mhm.
is a big night for blood sacrifice.
Wow. I'll have to make sure I'm armed and ready on end of April. Make
Oh
sure
yeah,
I'm woods, and if I am, I got all my gear with me, ready to handle business.
there you go, there you go.
That's crazy.
It's just like I said when I got in that situation on that night with that boy on top of that hill. Kind of taught me a lesson. Don't put yourself if you can help it in that kind of a situation again. I
Hmm.
thought, how many times if some of the dirty went down the other side of that hill or something, we would have been in big trouble. Um, but I actually later on, in years later, actually superficially attended certain types of dark masses that were performed just to see what. was being done. And I kind of put myself in danger again doing that because it's not a good idea to do it. I don't recommend people do that, but I wanted to see, I actually experience what was going on with this thing. And believe me, the stuff that I saw was mind boggling. The things that they do in these ceremonies, the things that they do to children in some of these
Hmm.
ceremonies. We won't get into that tonight. It's probably got a
Yeah,
family show going on here, but
it's
um,
bad. I
it
can
is
only imagine.
bad, bad, bad mojo. Okay, it's very bad stuff, and and a lot of, and I was talking about this to my friend William the other day on our podcast. That
Hmm.
you wonder how many people that so called disappear really end up victims of
Hmm.
some things like that. Especially children.
Absolutely. You were saying like disappearing and that kind of thing, but Nighthawk shared some stuff from already. These children are being bred, they're raised and bred to be just to be sacrificed to to the darkness, and
Mhm.
it's
Oh
crazy.
yeah, but like I said, there again, there's that blood thing, that blood connection. As the Bible always said, the blood is the life.
Hmm.
And it's interesting that your DNA is in your blood too, by the way. Uh, but these things, the blood, the shed blood, is especially in a ceremonial way, can be some very heady stuff. Look at the Incas and the Mayans. I think
Hmm.
I read where like one Mayan temple that was dedicated for so many weeks they would cut out 100 hearts every day
Hmm.
at that temple. Think about that a minute.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of people dying to be sacrificed by these
Yeah,
things.
had carvings,
That's dark.
carvings in the concrete for blood to run down to certain spots so they can fill these vats of blood up. The way they were chiseled out into the concrete. People
Hmm.
think they were like drainage channel, but these were for blood because there was like indentations of bodies where they would
Oh yeah,
be, and it would run
and
straight down.
on the Aztec pyramids and stuff, that's where the blood would flow down the steps from
Hmm.
the sacrifice. That's why those steps are like that. To a certain extent, that's dark magic. That's dark, dark, evil stuff. And my experience with that kind of stuff, it doesn't go away. Okay, it stays there. It stains the land. It stains that place. You need to remember that because you will encounter it if you go there in places like that.
Yeah. They're dropping the AC bombs. I don't want to talk too much about that because I like to keep my channel from getting zapped by Big Brother. You know what I'm talking about. The other things that they
Hmm.
take out of people that they use for the dark forces. So yeah, we're getting close to time. So I know you want to talk about what you and William are going to start getting into, and you can kind of do a little promotion on your books too, because people are asking about how they can get information on you for your book. So if you want to talk about that and the what you and William are going to be start doing next, let's do that.
Yeah, well, actually I'm getting ready to produce a video series. It's going to be called The Midnight Road Excursions into the Unknown. They're going to be like 10-minute videos of some of the cases I've done, some other things like that. So I'm looking forward to doing that pretty soon, starting production on that. I've got several books that are available on Amazon. If you go to denniswcarroll.com, you'll find all the links to those books and all that. And of course, I'm on the Red Rabbit Hole every Friday night with my friend William Nighthawk. It's at 10 every Friday night. And we also do Saturday and Sunday morning paranormal morning brew show. That's at 10 on Saturday and Sunday mornings. We get into some wild, wild different subjects. And we're also doing a show here recently, a new show. It's called Becoming Monsters, which will take one cryptid every show and talk about it. Just one cryptid. And we'll get deep into the subject on those different type cryptids. So we keep busy, we stay busy, and I'm always into investigative research, and don't get out in the field as much as I used to, like that I would like to, but I'd get out there and look for dogman if I can, definitely, and see if I can sight Sasquatch again. But
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing to note, Tom, that on several of my Bigfoot hunts, I've actually had some interference from government drones, like on my helicopters, bike vans. So evidently, other people are interested in some of this stuff too.
Oh, they are, and you know, if you're ever nearby, I'd like to show you some areas near me by the Charlotte, South Carolina border, because there's, I mean, all you gotta do is drive down 77 towards like past Carowinds towards Fort Mill, and all you gotta do is look in the woodline, and you can see all kinds of X's, arches, breaks, and bends. It's like they're advertising, like, "Hey, we're here, we're here." But if you think about it, it's the
Yeah.
perfect way for them to travel because all these interstates and states connect along an interstate, and
Mhm.
everything they all have one thing in common: woods. They're all thick woods, so they can travel one state to another without even being seen, just going along the interstate behind the wood line, and they can travel, hundreds of miles. It's
Right.
crazy. It's like they're
Well, you're
expressway.
set. Mhm. But that's what I say about a lot of this stuff. That's why I call it the high strangeness.
Hmm.
Always some of what are you talking about? High strangeness. What does that mean? I say, well, there's weird, and then there's really, really weird, and
Hmm.
then that's where you've stepped over into the high strangeness part of this, and that's very interesting to me. It's gotten, like I said many years ago, I had my own UFO encounter. We'll talk about it some other time too. That's a long story, but anyway, um, I lived the Mothman Prophecies there for a while. If you ever remember that movie. Um,
Hmm.
anyway, this high strangeness stuff got me more interested in a subject that was already interesting to begin with.
Well, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
You're interested in all of it. You were seem to be, to go after it and not really worry too much, and just be totally interested and go after what you desire, and you get information out of it and you learn from it. So I mean, it makes sense. Why not, right? As long as you can stay safe while doing it and not get wiped out one way or another, it's all good.
Yep.
Well, I do appreciate having you on, Dennis. And like I said, I'd like to show you, if you're nearby, I'd like to show you some areas by me, some hot spots. I mean, you'd be real interested in them because they're crazy. It's wild.
I enjoyed it.
Well, you have a good night. And when are you going to be back on with Nighthawk? When is your next show?
Well, I think our next show maybe I don't know if he's going to do the. We kind of rotate the becoming monsters thing, but we will definitely be there. The rabbit hole, red rabbit hole, Friday night at 10 o'clock.
That's right, 10 o'clock. Well, if I can make it that late, I'll definitely jump in and say hi to you guys. But it was definitely a
All right.
pleasure having you on, and I'd like to have you on again. We can go further down the rabbit hole, talking about more things like maybe vampires and some of these, ritualistic things and all that. So that'd be great.
All right.
Well, thanks
Sounds
for
great.
coming on. Thank you,
You take
everybody, for
care.
coming. Y'all have a good
All
night.
right.
Good night. Good night, everybody.